It's been a couple months since the Pat McAfee controversy where people thought, is he going to be done at ESPN? The Aaron Rodgers versus Jimmy Kimmel, all of this stuff. Well, Pat McAfee finally sat down on all the smoke and actually talked about it a little bit. Talked about going to war with his bosses. Talked about how a lot of people who were ex-ESPN workers really loved what he was doing there. And talked about whether or not he's okay with kind of being the lightning rod for controversy. And I wanted to read a couple things from here. It's a long thing. It kind of, there's like a 10-minute video. There's a 5-minute video. So I wanted to just get a couple of these quotes. Pat McAfee opens up about calling out ESPN executive, "We're at war." Here we go. When Barnes asked McAfee, was there any backlash to his comments about Norby Williamson, McAfee spoke for more than 5 minutes and gave several details. I thought that was a warning shot to that guy. I'm the executive producer of my show. I report directly to ESPN president Jimmy Pitaro and Disney CEO Bob Iger. I don't got a motherfucking boss. We talking Jimmy or Bob? Like, is that who we're talking about? Because those are people that could technically be described as my boss. He then noted that Williamson's a former producer of ESPN and said, I guess a lot of people have a lot of fear of him. I didn't. That guy left me sitting in his office for 45 minutes. No showed me when I was supposed to have a meeting with him 5 or 6 years ago. He then claimed it was Williamson who banned ESPN talent from appearing on a show 2 years ago when it was just on YouTube. We remember that happening. So obviously there was a lot of bad blood in general with this dude here. McAfee then described immediately upon joining ESPN, he felt unwelcome and in battle with his own company. Immediately, it's like, this guy sucks. This guy's ruining ESPN, said McAfee. It's not coming from people outside ESPN. It's coming from people within ESPN. I didn't expect that, so I'm like, I'm at war. That's what we're doing. We're at war. And basically said, this guy ain't shit. Norby Williamson ain't shit, can't do shit to me. He also did briefly mention kind of, he questioned, you know, is he doing the right thing by just letting everybody talk on his show when they had the battle with Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Kimmel? We broke a lot of that down and talked about it. But he did say that, you know, despite being okay with it at the end, despite letting everybody say what they fucking want, and that's how his show is, he did worry about it when he thought, you know, maybe he had done something wrong. Maybe he shouldn't be letting people do that. But at the end of the day, Pat McAfee still continues to bring on people like Aaron Rodgers and let them speak their piece on ESPN, even if people at old ESPN don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I mean, Norby Williamson, oof, no. I mean, just with all the recent cuts and layoffs, like, you know, between him and you know, Jimmy, not the actual president, like it's kind of a shit show over there at ESPN. So I really do you know, there was a whole ESPN stinks thing on Twitter that really just sort of got them in 5-alarm mode. But, you know, they've got a issue with their personnel and shit. And, you know, I do believe that this Williamson shit goes back way further. And, like, you know, that's just unlike that to even call that shit out. But the fact that he did this not only on his own show. I remember when it first dropped, when he was talking about the show on the show, but then going on another podcast and like literally just airing it out. It's like, you know, y'all better take care of this fucking problem there, because ESPN and Disney in general, like, they got too much shit on their hands. You know, Bob Iger's fucking literally letting it all drop to his fingers, so especially with the board. And now you got the C-suite execs fucking it up with their ESPN properties, man.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for the most part, how long has it been? We got to be closing in on, what, 8 months or something since he's been there? I don't think it's a full year yet.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think the show's not really any different. Right. I think by and large, the show isn't any different. He's still bringing on the same people. Obviously, we saw with the Aaron Rodgers stuff, they still talked about the same shit. And I do think there's a lot of people at ESPN that fucking hate him, that don't want him there. Because I think he represents a change from the, like, what they've been doing, change from what they've been doing for the past decade plus at ESPN that hadn't been working, that had been failing. And the fact that he's at war with people like Norby Williamson and other people at the company right when he gets there isn't really surprising based on what we knew he'd probably have to deal with at ESPN. I'm shocked that he hasn't been censored more.
Well, I believe that the old guard of not just sports media, but media in general, man, is ending. I mean, we just found out the other day that a whole bunch of people at CNN are probably about to get fired. because nobody's watching them. I mean, you can make the case ESPN, they've been on the decline for a while now too. I mean, Pat McAfee is one of the most important voices in sports media. He's much more important than a lot of those people on ESPN.
Yeah, and we've said it before. McAfee doesn't need ESPN. ESPN needs McAfee. They should be on their hands and knees begging McAfee to stay there. They are desperate. So this fucking this Norby Williamson guy, honestly, he can go fucking kick rocks, because like it would be ingenious. I don't know if it would be intentional, but it'd be genius for McAfee to have taken this contract, go on ESPN on their platform, keep the show the exact fucking same. I think that's one thing we were worried about, is how much the show would change and it would look different. He got a lot of backlash for it initially, but it really hasn't.
I think a lot of people didn't know that his show was still going to be on his YouTube channel, because the only word we got it was going to be on ESPN. It was
going to be on ESPN, and clips were going to be on his channel or whatever. But
that didn't happen. But
the show is the same. He's still just as, I guess, controversial, if you want to say, as he used to be. But it's just dudes talking shit. It's like your frat guys or your college friends. It's like your buddies come over and you guys just talk about sports for fucking hours, and that's all you do. That's what his show is like, and that's why people like it. But it'd be awesome if he's exposing some of the fucking rats inside ESPN on their own fucking channel. That's genius.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely risky, being out of the mainstream and going into the mainstream, because we saw what happened with Barstool when Portnoy was forced to fire Mitzi because he was rapping the N-word, and then corporate overlords told him, "Hey, you got to fire this guy," and he didn't want to, but he didn't have a choice because he didn't own the company anymore, and he rehired him once he got it back.
Yeah. That's one of the smartest things Pat did, though, is that he went in like a 10. Isn't he kind of closer to a contractor, really, rather than like being like an employee or something? Yeah.
He does other stuff with ESPN.
He does a lot of stuff.
He does a lot of stuff. Game day.
He's been doing like sideline reporting on college games and stuff as well. Like they're getting him involved in a lot of stuff. And I'm sure a lot of the people that have been there a long time, they're probably not happy. We heard Stephen A. Smith's comments about Pat McAfee. Even though he said it while trying to heap praise on him, he's like, well, he doesn't have to be as polished politically because, he's white, not black. Right. There's got to be a lot of bitterness from people that are there with him coming in. And
look at Stephen A.
To do his thing.
Stephen A. is now trying to be Pat McAfee with his own podcast now. I mean, all these people in the mainstream media that's starting to do their own thing as well, because they see the writing on the wall.